I am so excited today to introduce you to someone who has been an incredible leader in higher education for a very long time, who's been a mentor to me, who's been a friend and an ally, who's really helped kind of pave the path for universities, community colleges, and just higher education in general to rethink their work and to find ways to work together. And really, her work has been a tremendous inspiration for the University Innovation Alliance. And we wouldn't be anywhere near as effective as we are without the guidance and support and the path that has been identified and the road lit ahead by the person I'm going to introduce you to, which is Karen Stout, the president of Achieving the Dream, which is the largest network of community colleges who are working to transform and improve and serve students around the country. So please welcome my friend and yours, Stout. Hey, I'm so excited that we finally got to do this. So for those of you who don't know, Karen is a super big deal in that she's actually out in the field doing really intense work. She's always on the road. She's always doing cutting edge work. And as a result, it's very difficult to find a time when I could get her be sitting still. And so we've been wanting to do this for a really long time. So Karen, thank you so much for making the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to have this conversation with you, Bridget.
Oh, please. So for those, now I shared a tiny tidbit about ATD. Can you share for folks who don't know who ATD is, kind of just how can they describe it if they were in an elevator?
I describe it as a movement of community colleges across the country who are committed to improving student success results at scale and in an equitable way. Our colleges, we serve about 280 colleges in our large network, and then we reach about 400 community colleges with our work in what I call our networks within our networks. And we as ATD are trying to help colleges build their capacity to do this work. So we're customizing our supports, learning with the colleges as they're going along to give them what they need in order to continue their pathway forward. And this work is hard work. And we know from the research, and ATD has been around for 15 years now, that it takes time and patience and strong, courageous leadership at all levels of an organization to improve student outcomes. And this improvement journey is an imperative for our country. I mean, just this morning, an article from the Hechinger Report speaks to the increasing number of students that are leaving college without any credential. And that's just been in the last 10 years since we started this work that now has spread to others, and including the University Innovation Alliance, now one of the key networks in what is a larger ecosystem of work that's not just touching community colleges, but touching colleges and universities nationally, because we all have work to do on student success, no matter what the structure of our college is or how selective our mission is. We all have opportunities for improvement. We just have to be vulnerable enough to say that we need to improve.
100%, I agree. And especially for folks, trying to understand why this matters, it's really about the economic competitiveness of our country. It's, all of this talk lately about adult learners and people with some college and no degree, those folks have only really been served well by community colleges in the past. And right now, the only people who are credible, I think, in terms of serving them, understanding their needs, are community colleges. So we need to, as universities, see ATD and those who are leading community colleges as the experts who can teach us about the students who, frankly, the economic imperative we're really seeing, where we need to serve and where we need to step up and change. So I see ATD as just a tremendous leader in the space and really has you started kind of the change movement of the collective impact change movement.
Well, and the movement has changed dramatically in the last 15 years, and we're still changing it. And I respect that you feel that community colleges have led the way. And I think we have been, as a sector, very nimble and agile and been recognized as being nimble and agile, but we're not nimble and agile enough. And we're still designed to serve the traditional student, even community colleges. And I'm learning more about the way that our structures and systems are disenfranchising the very students we were designed to serve more and more as I'm out in the field. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I really have my eye on, because a lot of the reform work, and even with ATD, we look at cohorts of students that come into our colleges, and very often we go right to that traditional full-time student. We design to meet the success needs of that traditional full-time student. And we don't design with intention to the 80% of the students that are coming into our colleges who are not fitting that traditional profile. So we have a lot of work to do. And we have work to do beyond completion. As you mentioned, I mean, this is about the ROI for the student, not just about getting a degree or credential. And then it's about the ROI for the community and the workforce and the citizenry, the competencies of the citizenry and the community.
So I started in community college, so I'm a big fan. But you, I don't know if you attended a community college, but you led one.
I did.
You were a college president for a long time. It was very successful, widely heralded in that position. And then now you work with college presidents on the outside. I'm super curious about if there's anything that you have learned about the presidency from sitting on the outside, having formerly sat in that role, but now as someone who's responsible for helping them see kind of the common challenges that they have.
As I work with presidents and I visit campuses and I observe the work of the president, it's harder than I remember it being when I was in the seat. So that's one observation. And I was a president for almost 15 years. And I do want to say, Bridget, before I go forward with that, I attended a community college after I got my bachelor's degree to gather credits in order to get into graduate school to work on my master's in business administration. So I was an English major, did not have accounting 1, accounting 2, micro and macroeconomics and statistics. Those were 5 courses that I needed as prereqs after I got my bachelor's degree in English in order to get into graduate school. And I went to my local community college to gather those credits. Just an example of the type of people that we work with and serve, and the dilemma in how you evaluate the real success rates of community colleges as well, because I don't count in any of the statistical models we look at now around success. But I do think that the college presidency is changing and is much harder, given that this work is so ecosystem oriented. So there's the internal transformation that a president leads and sets up systems and structures to lead. And then there's the positioning that the president needs to do for the college in the external environment to align policy and practice policy primarily from the state and federal level to enable the change that they're trying to bring forward on their campus. And that type of alignment work is very challenging. At the same time, they're working as fundraisers in their communities, they're building new programs, and they're trying to connect all of that work to this larger mission of economic and social mobility. And they're constantly threading the needle with that messaging. And depending on the environment that they're in constricted funding environments. They could be in states that don't have the best policy conditions. Many community colleges have local control. So they have local issues as well as state issues, which sometimes I think we underappreciate in this change work, because boards of trustees are typically appointed locally, and the engagement of the board and the president's relationship with the board is really fundamental and very important to catalyzing the student success work.
Awesome. So I'm curious about I agree that the presidency seems like it's gotten way more complicated, because I think just existing in this country has gotten more complicated. Being a human being seems more complicated. Higher education seems to be responsible for, people look at us around, whether it's mental health challenges or any of the other issues that we see, but those things are happening in society. We're just a compressed environment that is on a pedestal, that on a stage to some degree. So it's hard out there right now. And I'm curious about achieving the dream is, first off, for those of you who are watching, if you're not super familiar, I highly recommend that you consider Dream, which is their conference they hold. I don't know if you know if it's like, I have the Guinness Book of World Records accurate, but it seems like the largest conference in higher education, period.
It's I think it is one of the largest. I think EDUCAUSE is probably the largest, but I think Achieving the Dream is definitely one of the larger ones, specifically related to people focused on institutional change and student success. There's no other convening that can match it. And it's interesting because it is designed, but it is also organic. So we really try to create micro and macro learning environments for the participants. And the feedback we get is that the colleges send teams. As many as 50 people from a college can come as a team, and they look through the convening agenda, and they tag team. They look at what they're interested in. All of the sessions are practice-based with evidence. So we're not talking about things that colleges are doing on their campuses that we don't know if they're working. We know these practices are working. So it's fun. There's a lot of energy. And it's the other thing that's unique about it, it's presidents with faculty, with administrators, with student affairs professionals, with IR professionals, IT professionals, chief business officers. So it's cross-cutting across the sector. And I think that's what really makes it unique.
Yeah, and I would say that for folks in higher ed, and again, there's all this, we're hearing the beacon around enrollment drying up, 18 to 22-year-olds, birth rates, all that kind of stuff. And so people are thinking, oh, finally, we'll look at adult learner. This is if you're talking about transfer or wanting to be a great partner, you should be sending your folks to where the community colleges actually have the stage. Don't be inviting them to an event you're having where you're going to talk to them about transfer, right? Like the people who are actually the experts. So think about if you do have someone in your organization who you expect to be informed about the challenges facing students, adult learners, and also just students transferring, and I'd say the bulk of the population, you should send them to Dream so they can.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you for that plug, because we have more and more representatives from four-year universities coming to Dream, as well as more state policymakers, think tank leaders, funders. Everybody's curious because a lot of times the next big idea or research agenda item emerges from a Dream conference. It's, okay, we know this, now what do we need to know in order to create this system, this stream of supports for students? There's always, questions are the answers.
Yeah.
So there's more and more questions that emerge.
So I'm curious, so everyone, you go to Dream. I think it's in February, end of February.
Oh boy, I think it's February 18th to the 22nd. It starts on President's Day.
And where are you having it this year?
National Harbor, right outside of Washington, D.C.
It's getting so big. I'm like, you probably only have a few places that you can even hold.
That we definitely are having a hard time finding venues.
Yeah. So I'm curious about if you could, for folks who are trying to understand the value and how this is different than other initiatives out there. If the theory of change around ATD, first, the part that I'm familiar with is you have data coaches who actually come in and help with the institution, figuring out where to go, what to do, all of that. But then you also run kind of team cohorts, and then you seem to also be doing professional development in the field on like every week I'm getting an announcement about something you're doing. So I'm just curious if you could weave that together in terms of what your theory of change is for folks so that they can kind of understand where to come in and where to tap into the resources at ATD.
Yeah, so we have multiple parts of our theory of change. We believe that colleges need to build strong capacity in 7 fundamental areas. And we design coaching supports to help colleges first diagnose what capacities they need to work on. And usually data and technology is a fundamental that most of our colleges need to work with. And we deploy, after the diagnostic, we deploy coaches to the colleges to help them build their capacities. Once they've built the capacity, we begin to work with the colleges on specific large-scale strategies that like teaching and learning, like holistic student supports, like the use of open education resources, but at scale in full degree programs. And we build networks, not just the big network, but we build networks of networks. So I think the real attractiveness of ATD is that coaching brings a habit and a discipline to the work. We are embedded with the colleges. We're with them every step of the way, and we hold our colleges accountable with the coaching. The second thing is that there's a lot of opportunities for peer-to-peer learning. Dream's just one big event for that, but we have a number of boutique programs where we bring faculty together to look at teaching and learning. We bring cross-sector folks from campuses to look at the student experience systems from inquiry all the way through advising and the redesign of advising. We have an OER network. We have a network of tribal colleges and universities where we're also deploying the same type of diagnostics and coaching tools. So it's the energy that comes from the dynamic of the network and the peer learning. And then the coaching has always been rated by our colleges as the highest value that we bring to them as they do their work. And now we're beginning to see colleges really make significant, substantial gains in student success, completion rates after 3 years, and reduction of equity or opportunity gaps between certain student populations. And it's becoming, many of our colleges have hit the tipping point. The flywheel is starting to turn. And that's really exciting. And that means, what does the next generation of work look like? Because it's still not enough when a college says their graduation rate for a community college has gone from a 3-year rate of 9% to 28%, or from 19% to 41%. That's still not enough. There's still work to do. How do we then continue to continue and sustain that momentum with all the challenges that our colleges are facing? And we haven't touched on the issue of the leadership challenges. While we have strong presidents and strong teams that are supporting presidents, we have pipeline issues across every functional discipline of leadership in higher ed, in the community college sector anyway. I'm not sure how you're looking at that in the university sector.
I mean, the biggest threat to progress on every one of my campuses and everyone I work with, it is transitions. It is a constant, we're constantly just having to reorient, rebrief, restart it, and institutional memory is limited. And then the talent pool of folks who are coming into these positions, they don't have the expertise. Like, I think people don't understand how hard it is to try and help a campus improve. Like, just because you know the lane of enrollment management, you know how to do that job, doesn't mean you know how to change enrollment management. Learning how to change a specific part of an institution means you don't just have to have mastery of the topic and know how to execute and be effective. You also have to change itself, like the lens of change in that window. And it's so rare. And I don't think, the thing that I consistently see are provosts and presidents who, it's like the secret you can't share is how there's just this palpable sense of insecurity of not knowing exactly what is really happening on my campus. I'm being told all kinds of things that are all positive, but I'm not seeing change. And I actually don't know what lever to pull, what button to push to try and improve it. There's too much alchemy. And, in the midst of that kind of sense of uncertainty, there are a few high point examples of campuses that have really, stuck the landing and figured it out. Many of those can be personality specific. They can be institution specific. And so figuring out what lessons transcend institutions, types, decentralized, centralized, and then once you figure that out, the transition is just constant. It's like we get somewhere and then I just get another announcement that person got promoted or they got poached. And
I mean, we know from the colleges in ATD that 8 of the 10 Aspen Prize finalists this past year were ATD colleges. The 2 winners are ATD colleges. When you look at the longevity of the president or chancellor at those institutions, you see 8 to 10 to 12-year tenures, even more. And you see presidents that have had long tenures understanding, being self-aware that this requires constant reinvention on their part too. That there are cycles for the CEO for leadership that are important also to recognize and feed so that we can have leaders stay in positions for enough time to begin to set the conditions in place that change can happen, whether they are there or not, right? That they can lead, they can hand it off to the next leader and be convinced that the building blocks are there for continued improvement.
And I feel like ATD, you partner with Aspen on the prize, right? And we
partner with Aspen in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Which Aspen, if you're thinking about how institutions are evaluated in terms of progress, like the criteria for the Aspen Prize, I wish there was something equivalent in 4-year space that was as robustly guarded and elevated in that way. And I know that there are some efforts to try and create things. So I just really respect their work. But I feel like that wouldn't exist without ATD. I feel like you all created demand and the clarity for the need for a pipeline to be invested in for the future.
Well, what's really great when you look at the metrics movement in community colleges, I think ATD was first in, and there was not a lot for us to build on. We were inventing it along the way. I was a college president in ATD while that was happening. And that was hard because there wasn't alignment for the metrics. Now with Aspen and the Community College Research Center, ATD, the post-secondary data program that the Gates Foundation is funding, there's a lot more energy around aligning the metrics. And so that brings coherence to the field.
Yeah.
And it really helps almost to give leaders a safe space because there are these nationally almost normed metrics. So we know now what are the early momentum metrics we should be looking at. And then how do you design systems and processes to help more students get to those early momentum metrics? Because you know those are going to lead to improved completion. Mm-hmm. And I guess there could be that framework could be adapted, I think. Maybe that's something we should work on together.
Yeah, because honestly, it's too easy to game the system and to tell your president, oh yeah, we're doing well at this because you cherry pick a metric that you look good on today. That's what I see is that presidents are not being advised effectively, that they are being, people are trying to keep their bosses happy. And part of the problem is that they actually need clarity to know what needs to change. And that's a hard message to bring. We are failing at this. Who wants to be the person bringing that message? Well, no one, apparently. And so sometimes I frequently are seeing, especially institutions that reach out to me and ask for guidance. I listen to the story they're being told by the experts who work for them. And we need clear measures of quality to know what to actually pay attention to, because there's a lot of noise and a lot of measures that without clarity, they're not going to be helpful.
When colleges come into ATD, if they've not done any other type of student success work, they come into a 3-year experience that begins with like a 1-week kickoff. The president has to be there, and they can bring 5 or 6 members of their team. They can decide, who needs to be at that kickoff. But at that kickoff, we are working. They do pre-work. We work with them. We dig into their data, and they come out with big insights that then drive out a work plan for the next 3 years. Mm-hmm. The colleges that come, and I mentioned this before, have to be humble, and they have to understand they need to be vulnerable. They need to know. And by the end of the kickoff, not only are they vulnerable, then they know what the bigger case for the why is.
Yeah.
And all of the leadership team is better prepared to speak to the imperative of the case for the why. Mm-hmm. And to contextualize it within their particular community. And for community colleges, suburban, urban, rural, that big why contextualized can be different. Mm-hmm. But the storytelling piece comes out of that kickoff. And I think that's really important when you talk about leadership and a team understanding the big why.
Yeah. The lesson that's really popping up for me right now is that when you have strong leadership that's clear, and then you have a plan, you have to have somebody who's going to run that plan, somebody who's going to quarterback for the president. And if you end up with the wrong quarterback who doesn't actually want to do the hard work, because it's hard work, it's unpopular work to do change work. I mean, you're basically saying whatever we've been doing is wrong. Nobody wants to carry that message. But if you pick the wrong quarterback, the message to the president can be, this doesn't work. And they can believe it. When it's really a lack of commitment to doing the hard stuff necessary. And it's not really about the work, it's about internal change muscle and whether the institution has the appetite and the tolerance for it. So I feel like there are just layers upon layers of areas where ATD is on the front lines and is showing us kind of what to pay attention to and giving us a hint of where to look. So I'm super grateful for that. I just feel like you all have been such an incredible force in the field. And from the beginning, I was reaching out to you all asking, how do we do this? Doesn't matter, community college or university, like this whole collective impact stuff's hard. So I'm super grateful for that. And I did want to wrap though with the two questions I always ask. Well, I know that you, just like everyone else, one of the biggest impediments to everything in higher ed is overwhelm. I see people overwhelmed all the time. We can barely get through our inboxes. Schedules are insane. Too many meetings, all of that. Do you have any tips that allow you to survive in the midst of just constant demands?
Well, I try to manage my calendar like 3 to 6 months in advance, honestly. And when I was a college president, I didn't have to go that far ahead. Maybe I could do 2 month increments, but here it's 3 to 6 months. I look ahead, I block out Monday mornings and Friday afternoons, and the only one that can take away that block of time is me. So my assistant knows that those times are blocked, and I use those for prep for the week and then debrief for the week on Friday. The other thing that I've started to do, Bridget, I've experimented with a lot of things. I journal, I try to practice meditation, but I've done this crazy thing in the last couple of months, and I've decided for the first time to run a half marathon. And I'm training for it, and that has become my personal priority, and I'm blocking out the time for my runs, and it gives me a chance not only to prepare for the half marathon, but to think. It's crazy that that's what I've had to do to actually honor myself when I set time aside. So that's what I'm doing right now. I use different strategies, and I'm hoping one after all these years in higher ed will land and work for me.
That's awesome. Super fun for you. When is the?
I'm getting old to be the first one. I was a college athlete, but and I run 5Ks and 10Ks. It's December 7th.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
Well,
I'm 1 week. I'm following a Hal Higdon plan from Out of Runner's World, and I'm right on schedule. I did my 10-mile long run last Sunday, and I have my 12-mile long run coming up in the next 5 days. So we'll see if I'm walking in the office next week.
You will be great. I followed Hal Higdon's guide for, I ran a marathon a long time ago just so that I could do what I just did right there, which is to name drop that I've done a marathon. Because that's really the purpose. But his stuff is, you're on the right path. That's awesome. I'm proud of you for doing that. And that's smart, because honestly, most of us in these roles don't ever get time to think. You get time to react at best.
I write some of my best speeches while I'm running. I can't remember them later, but while I'm running and crafting them, they seem pretty good.
Yeah, voice note for me. I'm just like, I'm leaving myself these random messages, and if I check them later, they're like, I've recently discovered I've been bully life coaching myself with voice notes. So anyway, okay. And then the last question, because I know you do live on the road, anything that is a travel tip that helps you do all of that and keep your energy?
Wow. I fly a lot, and you do too. And there are a couple things that I've learned recently. I was never a fan when I would look around on a plane and see people wearing masks. And it wasn't until I went to South Africa this past summer and I needed one in order to sleep, that I realized, boy, these are magical. So I have been using my mask more, and I am able to, if not sleep, I can kind of reduce the light noise that comes into your eyes and your head. And of course, noise canceling headphones with the mask, and you can put yourself in just about any environment you want. The other thing I do is before I travel on a plane, I do a to-do list. So I almost go through and write, here are the things I'm going to work on for work, and these are the things I'm going to work on personally. I've started to write some poetry, so I use some of that time to do the poetry. And if I can immerse myself in that kind of pre-planned work and writing, I don't get as stressed by the constant delays and just the overall drain that travel brings. So I'm less tuned in then to when the pilot comes on and says, "Oh, I think we have to go back for X, Y, or Z." I can just keep with the flow. Here's what I intended to do. If it's going to take a little longer to get there, that's okay. And recently I missed my own keynote while I was sitting waiting to take off for an ATD event, and I realize it can always be rescheduled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's good. Well, those are good. Those are good. And have I given you a sleep? You're now giving me my my list for gifting for you. Do you have a Sleep Master eye mask?
No.
girl, you better watch out.
No. Uh-oh.
Making a note.
Does it have dials on it? Like it does? It's like
a thicker kind of, it's a satin mask. So it's dark blue, and you wrap it all the way around your head so it covers over your ears instead of kind of the irritation right here. And it goes all the way down to here and here. I used to give those to people. In fact, it was part of our speaker gift package for the summit, because it was like all the travel things that I'd found that worked. But I'm going to get you a Sleep Master mask. But I love this wisdom that you've shared and that you continue to share every day in your work. And so for folks who want to connect with Achieving the Dream and with Karen, where can they go to connect and learn more? Well,
our website is a good first starting point, and I think my contact information is right on the website. So anybody that wants to reach out, I do try to get to my emails, but as you said, sometimes it can be a week or two. But I try to be as accessible as possible, and that's just, I think all leaders need to have that accessibility. So please reach out to me, and if I can't answer your question, I can get a member of my team to help you. Awesome. All right. And for folks who are coming in on Periscope, I've already linked to her Twitter profile and to Achieving the Dreams. Oh, yes. And you can direct message me on Twitter, follow me, and direct message me on Twitter as well. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Big fans of your work, and really can't wait to see what Achieving the Dream does in the next 5 years. Now that you've Thank you, Bridget. Thank you. We'll have to turn the tables the next time. Okay, just wait 10 more years and we'll be at our 15th. All right. All right. I'll see you later. Okay, bye. Bye.